Alright guys, what is up? Proto Bro here, infamous brother to Mega Bro, and continue on the tutorial for Hearts of Iron 3 Black Ice. As you can tell, I spent almost 30 minutes just going over this little tab down here and the province tab. So as you can tell, this is a very detailed game, steep learning curve. My goal is to thoroughly educate you on how to play this game before you play it, so that you can enjoy this game as much as me. That's the whole goal here, okay? So I apologize that I'm doing a ton of talking, but unfortunately it's necessary to explain this game. I know when I tried to read the owner's manual on this game and teach it myself, it just took forever. So I feel like this method is probably more effective in showing you how to play this game. I would say just up front, right, I've played all three Hearts of Iron. I've logged literally hundreds of hours in this game alone, including Black Ice, so I'd like to think I'm pretty familiar with how to play it. I don't claim to be an expert. I play for fun. I don't spend oodles of hours trying to memorize all the little ways to maximize things. But I would say I'm an advanced player. I do try and take advantage of the terrain, the construct of a particular military, the weaknesses of my enemy, so forth. And you actually have to. I usually play on hard, and hard is very difficult to win, especially as you will see on as Japan. Okay, so the next thing we're going to focus on here is the production tab. I didn't talk too much about this top part here, so let's talk about that real quick as we scroll up to Antarctica. Up here, this is again your master tab. This is everything that your country currently owns, all right? And you don't ever want to get zero on any of this stuff. So this is oil right here, okay? That's rare materials. And what's nice, one of the things I really enjoy about this game is that it actually sits here and tells you what each one does. Here's metal. Requires various metal ores, although this is a primary iron ore. These are used to produce IC, so industrial capacity, which we're going to talk about at length in this playthrough, or this video. Electricity, again, this is just like, it's just kind of a bottom line, hey, it helps your industry run. And then where's fuel? Alright, so fuel is what obviously makes your tanks and your planes and your ships go. Anytime you have ships out at sea, your fuel will be used up. And fuel is made from your oil, right? And then you have here your industrial capacity. So we have 127 industrial capacity with 0 available currently, as I will show you. Money. Money is very important as well, because without money you cannot do research. Without money you cannot perform intel missions. And without money you cannot produce IC. IC is drastically cut when you're out of money. So money is very important as well. And as you will see, there are a variety of ways to kind of manage your economy and manage the way you produce things, and you just got to kind of balance things and kind of figure out what the best fit is based on the country you're playing. Manpower is very, very important. For Japan, it's actually a bit of a stickler long-term in the long-term game. Every time you take casualties and you have to replenish, it uses manpower. Every time you build a new new fleet or a new division or whatever, it uses manpower. It is very important to the overall kind of workings of the game. Diplomacy points. This allows you to essentially offer up trade agreements to foreign countries, influence other countries to make them align more closely to your political views, which then means they're going to be more favorable to you in terms of trade agreements, so better trade agreements, more likely to not declare war on you, more likely to ally with you, so on and so forth. And it also allows you to do a variety of other things under the diplomacy tab, which I'll show you later. Espionage. This kind of does a couple things, right? You can do political intel, which I'll show you under the intelligence tab once we get there. I want to see this one here is directly related to intel, and this one here is directly related to diplomacy. That's what these two contribute to, if you're curious and want to know what they do. But as far as intel, there's a variety of things you can do, but that's right here. And then this here is your leadership, our officer leadership ratio. I think you want this around 120 or 140%, I believe is what I've seen. It's really hard to keep it maintained at that though. And this is essentially like, as it sees here, right, 100%. If it falls below 100%, our units become increasingly likely to fall apart in combat if they take too many losses. So it basically directly affects the ability of your army to kind of not only keep pushing, but to kind of stay engaged and not flee the battlefield. Revolt risk, this can be hard as the Axis countries, because you're often dealing with dissent. The higher dissent gets, the lower your industrial capacity is. And then finally, national unity. If this gets below, a certain percentage, then your country will just surrender or cease the war. So one of the things you'll see me do is right before I invade a country, I go in with basically my spies, and as far as espionage is concerned, I'm trying to lower their national unity, and then between that and conquering these VP spots, forcing them to surrender. So instead of trying to take out their whole army, that's how I go about usually engaging my enemies. Alright, so that's that there. So now production. Alright, so here we go. What you've all been waiting for. So this is the production tab. This is where you build stuff. But this is also where you do something even more important. You also kind of manage the everyday comings and goings of your empire, so to speak. Okay, so every day your country will do stuff. This basically says percentage-wise what I want my country to do on a particular day. There's upgrades. So as you research new technologies, your divisions don't just automatically upgrade. Your ships don't automatically upgrade. You have to invest to upgrade them. That being said, there are a few things that you research specifically to your naval fleet that can never be upgraded. So if you build a carrier in 38 and come out with a new technology for your carrier, sometimes those technologies cannot be upgraded to that 38 carrier. You have to end up actually building a new version of a carrier in order to get the researched upgrade. A little too much detail at this point, I'm sorry, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. So anyways, you can do this is how much money or how much of your industrial capacity, right? So we have 38 total. So not 127, we have 38 total industrial capacity to invest however we want. Okay. Speaking of which, once we start the game, this will actually change. I'm just using this as a baseline. And how do we get our industrial capacity? As I mentioned last game, it is on the resource tab, which is where down here. So all these greens add up to 38. Okay. So if I were to, for example, here to take this territory here, which is 1, the industrial capacity, then mine would go up to 39. So that's kind of how it works in a nutshell in terms of your industrial capacity total number. But then you get the 38 and you can distribute the 38 as you please, right? So we have the upgrades we just talked about, the reinforcements again as your reserve units. So say in times of war you take a reserve unit, you turn it into a primary active duty unit, or even a new unit that you put on the battlefield, or a unit that suffered casualties. This reinforcement tab is where you would do it. Again, this is your overall empire tab. There's a way also to specify what you want upgraded by going to a particular unit and basically making it a priority. But this is kind of your overall tabs. Supplies. The supply tab up here, which is 31,650 right now, I skipped that previously for a reason, is really what we're talking about with the food that goes into your soldiers' stomachs. If that gets down to 0, you're in big trouble. And also you'll see that during times of build-ups and then also times of battle, your supplies are actually going to go down a lot quicker. That's either because they're going through the supplies as a result of the battle that's going on, or they're deeper in enemy lines, and so the supply routes aren't very good, and so it's actually costing you more supplies to get to them, or your supply routes at sea are being attacked and being hampered. But what I always try and do with these supplies is I always try and keep a pretty bulky amount up here, because I just never know when I'm going to eat through a bunch of them really quick. And really, I can tell you, like, if you don't have enough supplies before you go to war, that could be a total deal killer before you even get engaged in the conflict. Production. This here has to do with this right here, which I'll explain in a second. But this here is all it's right here. Okay. So currently we need 237 of this to make all this. All right. Again, once the game starts, this adjusts, so this is actually much higher than 38. But it's definitely not 237 worth. Consumer production, so this is basically how much food or how much industrial capacity you need to give to your people to keep them happy, to keep this 0. or to decrease this. And this will ebb and flow depending on your policies, depending on how the war is going, depending on where you're in a war footing or whatever. And then Lend-Lease, this is essentially how much of your IC you're willing to give to your coalition allies or your puppets. Theater forces, as I told you before, it's right here. This is kind of give you suggestions on what you should build. Here it's saying we should build some tactical bombers. So 1 fighter, 3 tactical bombers. And here it says we should build 1 fighter, 11, that's a lot, 11 brigade tanks, and 3 tactical bombers. So that's for, I want to say this is the one over in Tokyo, and this is the one up in Manchuria. Alright, so production tab right here. Alright, so this is the order with which you will be building stuff. As you can see, we currently have queued up a whole bunch of boats. And you can basically increase and decrease the order with which you want them to build. Notice here, so these are CAGs, which are carrier air groups. So these are what land on your aircraft carriers. Notice how it costs 43 IC to build one of these. Most carriers can hold 1 or 2 of these at a time, but they're very expensive to build. And so what you would want to do is if you wanted to build some of these other things first, maybe you would drop this all the way down the bottom. And you can just order and prioritize as you want. There's no harm in having something here as in that's not being built because you don't have enough IC. That's fine. It's one way to, if you want to have a long-term approach, you say, hey, I want to build such and such within a 2-year period of time. You can load it all up like this and then just kind of, as you go through, knock it off one at a time. I can tell you, and this is huge, 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 big foot stomp, please remember this. If you build something not simultaneously, but one after another, then each time you build it again, your country is more efficient at building that particular division or whatever it might be, and so therefore it costs a little bit less IC to do it. So what do I mean? Say for example here we want some command cruisers. Okay. Then what we do is for serial here, we go 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So it's going to cost us 20 IC per build. So 20 of our 38, for example. Each build is going to take 8 manpower from here, and it's going to take us 52 months to build. I'm going to say all 4 of these. So to build one, it's going to take 13 months. But what will happen is at the end of that first one, the second one's going to be a little bit cheaper than this 20.49. Instead, it's going to be like 19.5 or something. And then the third one's going to be like 19. And so that's one of the ways that the game actually encourages you to kind of do a long-term approach rather than just build one at a time. And it's also, I think, pretty accurate in terms of how countries actually operate, right? If you have a factory building B-17s, for example, the longer that they spend building B-17s, the more efficient and the better at it they're going to get, right? So that's kind of what the game tries to build into here, is this the serial approach. And then you can also do parallel. So instead of, say I want to build 4 of these, well, instead of doing 4 one after another, taking 52 months, I can build 4 in half the time, but for twice as much. Right there, right? So that's for the flotilla, that's boats. Sorry, Navy people, I know, naval vessels, not boats. And you got all these different options. So again, you can really customize how you build your Navy and what you really want to focus on. I believe what the rule of thumb is if you're going to go carrier heavy, then go cruisers to complement it. So a lot of cruisers. And if you're going to go battleship heavy, then you want to go destroyer heavy. I think that's the rule. Obviously you can mix and match, but that's what a lot of people do. They focus on it that way. Black Ice makes it to where battleships are a little less effective than carriers, but they're cheaper. I want to say they're cheaper, right? Let's see here. That's just a regular battleship. About the same cost, same time to build. That's a command battleship. So as you tech up, these can also be better. battleships and carriers, they have their own strengths and weaknesses. Don't let people fool you and think you have to go carrier heavy all the time. You don't. You can actually go battleship heavy and I think get away with it. But if you're going to go battleship heavy, then you want to go, I think you want to support it with light carriers to be safe. I think you have to mix and match a little bit better if you're going battleship heavy. Whereas with carriers, you can just go boatload of carriers and just support them with a boatload of light cruisers, and you're usually doing pretty well. I try and go for a little bit more realistic historic approach. So I'm not just going to go spam carriers. You know, I'm going to build a lot of carriers, but I like to kind of mix and match building, so it's more fun that way, right? So, anyways, I'll explain how to build your divisions in my next video. But as you can see, there are tons of brigades, all this stuff. And so I know I've been using terms recently that I didn't explain what I meant, but so a brigade is just this, right? So that's an infantry brigade. And then in order to make a division, you make a couple of brigades. Let's see here. I'm just building this right. This makes a division. Okay, so what you see here, see that there? Let me get out of this tab really quick. Is this right here, right? So this is a division. This division contains 7 brigades, all of which are of different construct, which is another big, huge change that Black Ice has added that's kind of evolved over the years. It's been really cool to see the evolution of this. But essentially, to make a division effective and make it do what you want it to do, you really need to mix and match here and kind of incorporate the strengths of all these different pieces of you know, the different things that brigades would add. I can tell you, being in the military, that's how things operate, right? There's not just a pilot. A pilot is supported by literally probably 100 other individual airmen who make that pilot capable of doing what he does. And that's what this game is trying to achieve here, is by doing this. Okay. And then air wings, they've been changing these things up, so actually they just changed all these icons, so it's going to be harder for me to remember what any of these are. But here's a flying regiment, and I don't know what any of these are. but basically, you unlike the divisions here, where you build lots of them into a division, it's kind of similar like the naval. You build one ship at a time. Planes, you build one plane at a time. So this is naval. So these go after naval vessels. This looks like, based on what it does, these are all zeros. So this plane sucks. All these planes suck. Really need to research my planes. Look at that. It's a HQ. That's why. Okay. Interesting. I'll explain that in the combat section. Now I know what these are. This is what I was looking for. This is what I'm familiar with. Okay. So here you'd build basically one interceptor. And I think literally the game, I think it's supposed to, I don't know if it's a flight or if it's literally one plane. I don't know what they're trying to replicate. But anyways, you build these one at a time and go through there. And that's under the air thing. Convoys, this is where you would build your convoys. These are what escort your supply chain that I was showing you. So, again, your supply chain. And supplies. This right here, you build these convoys right here to protect them. Or what you can do is you can build destroyers, convert them into convoys. Or you can just have your ships patrolling those areas looking for subs. That's another way to do it. And then here are your escorts. Oh, shoot. Other way around. Sorry, guys. The convoys transport the supplies. The escorts provide the escort. See what I did there? So that's that. And then down here, this is where all your convoys are. Right? So we've got a convoy from Kanazawa to Hamhung. And what are they transporting? They're transporting supplies and fuel. And you have one convoy doing that. We have 63 convoys available left. We have 27 escorts available. I can tell you right now, 63 ain't crap for the Japanese. We're going to have to build a boatload more, as in hundreds, even before the U.S. declare war on us, because they're going to eat through a ton of those. But what's nice here is you can actually build more convoys if you want. You can do create convoy. You have to do auto create, which basically means that it's going to create a convoy as the need arises. or you can basically manually do it yourself, which can also be beneficial depending on the circumstances. You won't see me do a whole lot of that. Maybe once I go to war with the US, I may end up doing it a lot more frequently, just to try and kind of pipeline where I'm sending everything and protect it better. But usually I just do auto and let the game take care of it. And so when I land on mainland China, you'll see supply routes get kind of opened up and auto created, and it'll take from this pool of convoys and it'll start sending me supplies. And then see here, Pusan to Kanazawa, it's sending all these different things. Alright guys, so that's the production tab. As you can see here, these two. I don't use this very often because I have that up here, but it's here just in case you're curious to see it. This trade route, this will kind of populate as we play, and that's with all the foreign countries. Essentially what we're exporting and importing to either make money or to get resources that we don't have available due to our limitations. And then here, this tab, I never use this. I manual do this here, but as you can see, you can do AI control, normal. Here you can do prioritize, all that stuff. Alright. And then last but not least, I almost forgot, the strategic resources. So if you remember, I was talking about strategic resources, like this right here. Or when we invade China, this here, and that here. If we go to production, this will tell us what they do. So we have currently dockyard facilities, which give our naval base efficiency 20%, and at Tokyo, it gives it 100% naval base efficiency. What does that mean? It means that when we dock our ships into those dockyards, then they'll repair quicker, right? And they'll actually get resupplied quicker. Military Academy, officer recruitment's up 20%. National Unity, that's basically this right here. Goes up 0.02. These you can build, by the way. So if you get 10,000 cash, I think it is 10,000, then you can actually build one of these. Otherwise, you can conquer them as well, as you saw, like right here. There's another one here. So a couple of these are basically events or areas that we control or things that we've built. All right. So that's all right here. So if you're ever kind of curious what your strategic resource situation looks like, you just go to the production tab, you look here, and there it is. And these are kind of like overall enhancements that are really awesome to have. Alright guys, so with that, we are all done with the production tab. With the next video, what I'm going to run through is I'm going to run through diplomacy, I'm going to run through research under tech, the politics tab, the intel tab, and then the video after that we will talk about the combat mechanics, how to build a military, and then once all that's through, I hope you'll enjoy watching my Let's Play. Alright, thanks guys.